So to the everyone who's watched by the videos on my other on my channel, both of you, I say how I'm just doing this just to promote my side hustle. But I started to try something different. Like I got inspired by people like Camelot, 331, or Fanvision, um, to talk about my past retail experiences. Just kind of one big one that I'm going to talk about is my tenure at Dollar General. It's probably going to be at least two videos. Um, So before that, retail experience wise, I was a stalker at a grocery store, which A sucked because it was overnights. The pay benefits were really good, but that was so ungodly boring. I was legit losing my mind. I mean, I just had listened to the music that was going over. I was by myself, couldn't listen to anything because we had to listen in case they paged us for like messages or emergencies, which legit happened twice in like the 9 months I was there. Shift was 10 to 2, and the way I am, even when I got home, I was still up to like 4 or 5, which means I slept till like noon, which meant I couldn't really do anything. Even on my days off, you got to maintain your sleep schedule. So that was great, insane. And also, like, there's so many more varieties of canned tomatoes than you think. And you had to get them right. Even then, we had three different varieties of canned smoked oysters. Three brands. No idea why we needed that many. Um, After that, I worked the final 2 years that Toys R Us existed. That place I really liked. People were nice. I lost weight because I would walk like 7 miles in a shift. Um, no major blowups, which in a way I'm kind of disappointed. I did have to work Thanksgiving, like in the evening, but they provided food. It was well organized. Everyone knew what was going on. So that I really liked. After that, is when I went to Dollar General. I was there for about 9 months, 8, 9 months, 2017, from January to August or September. After that, I went to work at a grocery store. I was behind the counter, which wasn't bad. I mean, better than Dollar General. Um, After that, well, kind of in the meantime, I was starting to deal with some health problems, so I kind of had to take a break from work, so to speak. Um, but since then, I found a career that I pretty much just fell into, um, where I feel like I matter. Doing something more impactful than slinging Twinkies to potheads in the middle of bloody nowhere in Southern Illinois. Um, Plays not spectacular, which is probably the reason why I have a side business, which get more on that in a minute. So there's hope for you if you're stuck in some private retail. Things might turn around, hopefully. Um, so yeah, like I mentioned, I'm not gonna say what town I was in, but semi-rural Southern Illinois. Um, I have notes over here in case you're wondering why I'm looking down my couch. Yeah, so the video is probably gonna be two parts. First part is the building of the company. Second part is gonna be stories of customers mostly. Um, so to start out with, where we were was a couple blocks from an interstate intersection, and we have one of those big signs that's lit up that you see near interstates where it's advertising, fast food gas station where it's lit up. And ours, because the store was like a block or two from the highway that intersected the interstate, and of just field. So it was just a small building, and the sign it was lit up, but only from one side. So if you came from one side, you thought we were closed, and it's probably been that way forever. And I've driven by there since, and it's been on 8 years. Still haven't fixed it. So when I started, the building first of all it had manual doors, like a fucking Stone Age. But one was broken, so there's a sign saying please use the other door. Not crazy unreasonable. At some point, I forget exactly when. I want to say it was at least a few months. The other door broke, and the solution was to keep it just wide open when we were open, which at first wasn't bad. But then it got to summer, and if you don't know, Southern Illinois, uh, it gets to in the 90s. and with about 100% humidity. So you're standing next to the door that's open, and I love that, like what we consider peak summer. But before that, and plus the dress code, you have to wear a black polo, black pants on top of this. And minor thing was you had to wear a name tag, and it still used like the safety pin thing, even though the entire other world had switched to magnets, so you don't constantly putting holes in your shirt. But and so of course also being summer and inside there's bright lights, we got a lot of bugs, kind of June bugs or stink bugs, whatever. They didn't bother me too much. One of the key holders was like deathly afraid of bugs. Um, so that wasn't a great combo. And so we had a fan behind us, just normal staying up fan to help, mitigate that. But at some point, the fan died. And it wasn't the fan itself, if I correct myself, it was the outlet. The outlet itself died, which sounds like a safety hazard. So that was a problem. And so, we were SLO for a while. And the manager, I remember when I started, he said, official policies, you can't have a drink, there, but, especially since the doors being the way they are, you can keep a water bottle, just don't drink it in front of people, just out of sight, and then kind of when you're done, it's a little bit, which, seems rather reasonable. Um, Now, the manager that hired me, he wasn't the real manager. He was kind of the fill-in one. I guess they had like temporarily promoted one of the key holders because the current manager was deployed. I guess he was National Guard. I guess that makes sense. And the guy that was the manager at the time, bless his heart, he was working like 60-hour weeks. He was stressed constantly, partly because of all the shitty policies that Dollar General has. Um, so I'll get on the real manager in a minute. And also with the building, we had bathrooms and we had to keep them locked because people suck, and we had to make sure try to reduce the amount that they get fucked up. And the keys were on fly swatters that we people ask like, hey, can I get the key? And everyone's hand the fly swatter, make sure we got it back. Now at some point for a while, the women's bathroom broke. The bathrooms were identical. It was just semantics basically of why we separated them. So sometimes women would be like, yeah, but okay, well, the women's broken, here's the men's. And most of the time I got like a look like, and I'm like, they're the exact same, just go for it. And which is also kind of funny because what I've heard from people selling sports online or like other people I know, the women's bathroom tends to be worse, surprisingly. And where I'm at now, it's about even. I'm not seeing anything too crazy, but in terms of like unflushed toilets, it's about even. Um, Now, another thing is, you've probably seen this at, I haven't seen this at every Dollar General, but I've seen this at some, where there's a bunch of stuff out on the, I guess what you call the patio. And it's on like both sides, typically some kind of seasonal stuff. Like in the summer, it's potting soil and briquettes and plastic pools, other shit like that. Now, when you opened, you had to get those from inside and put them out. And they had to go in very specific spots. And the opposite of when you closed, you had to wheel them into usually about an hour before we close, half hour we start reeling them in. And they had to go in the different aisles, again, in very specific spots. Of course, you had to like thread it so people could still walk through. And the whole time I was there, I swear, we sold two things from the patio. So this whole thing was not worth it. And I remember when during the summer, we had storms coming in, and a lot of the plastic pools blew away. And because also behind us was pretty much field. And again, the manager, he had to go get them all. I don't know if they would deduct his pay or pulled some shit like that. Like they didn't even give us an employee discount, which every little bit counts, especially when you're making shit money at Dollar General. But anyway, he got him back. Of course, a lot of them in bad ass shape, but that didn't matter because no one's gonna buy the damn things anyway. So typical shifts was 5 hours. Sometimes they'd schedule me for 5.5 hours, which really didn't make a lot of sense because 5.5 hours qualifies you for a 30-minute break. So I was working the same amount of time, but I was just had to be there a half hour longer. And the break room was the back area with a folding table and a chair. So I usually just went to McDonald's and ate in my car the few times it happened. Sometimes I'd work 6 hour shifts, which made a little more sense, obviously. It just seems rather a moot point. So all the register duty, which means kind of had to manage the front, literally the front half of the store. And when there was no one to check out, you have to like stock and straighten. Well, and I've seen this at every single Dollar General. Their POS system, point of sales, sucks or is just non-existent. They overbuy and underbuy like crazy. You walk in any Dollar General, you'll see carts at the end caps full of crap that they don't know where to put. The back was full of the brim most of the time. There was sometimes where, like, to get to the back area, because later we had to keep our water bottles behind there. Yeah, I get back to this second. I literally had to shimmy through. And there was one day where we hired some outside company to do inventory, which again seemed like pretty pointless because I just like, yeah, we got too much. And so, and then, the tops of the aisles are also just full of brim of whatever. Again, we have none of this and we have 100 of this that we don't sell. I don't know how this place stays in business. Um, and kind of near the front is the seasonal. So, Christmas, summer, back to school, all that. And they give you this sheet that's essentially a map of where you got to put certain stuff. It's called a planogram. This was equally as useless because you'd have, okay, I have stuff that goes here. I don't have this. I don't have this. I don't have this. This, I have the right amount. This, I have 5 times too much. This, I have 3 times as much that I need. So, pretty pointless. Everyone who works there is frustrated too. The key holders, which besides the manager guy, there are 2 other key holders. There's one who was, I would guess, about my age. She was pretty nice. She was the one afraid of bugs. And then the second one, this is a little funny. The way she looked, I thought she was closer to my mom's age. There's one day when she was buying cigarettes, and I had to like look at her ID because you always have to punch in the person's ID, birthday, and she was about my sister's age. Maybe that's smidge older. And I was like, "Ooh, you've been rode hard, put away what?" And one day, I guess she was dealing with kid drama. I think she already had teenagers, and she was like, "Do you have kids?" I went, "No," and she goes, "Don't." I'm like, okay. Fast forward 5-ish years, I'm on dating apps, the typical ones, trying to not die alone. And I come across her. And I was just like, nope. I'm sure she doesn't remember me because that place went through people really quick. We have one guy, I think he quit in between hiring and getting hired and starting his first shift. I think it was that kind of thing. I mean, it's not like my training was like 5 minutes, so who the hell cares or knows? And there were a couple times where we had to like beg for change. We had to put a sign saying, "Please give us exact change or card, or if you have any change that we can swap out." This happened more times than it should have. And there was one time, I believe, I was coming to do my shifts. My shift started at 5, so me being me, I got there 5 10 minutes early. The overachiever I am. And so I go in, and they're like, "We need you to go to the bank to get change or deposit or something like that." I'm like, "I don't know where the bank is." They're like, "Just go down Main Street. You'll come across it. You gotta hurry." I get there, and they close at 5. So they were, I guess, anticipating me being early to send me, or I don't know why they didn't just send the current cashier. I don't know if they have to have a rule of like 2 people in the building at once, because where I am now, we have a rule about 2 people actively working at once for like safety and concerns and stuff like that. So I don't know if it was that or just poor planning, which seems rather reasonable knowing that place. But yeah, that was so I'm like, okay, well that was fucking pointless. Um, and I didn't. The doctor that I worked at was like the town over from the one I worked at, lived in. Thank God I was not gonna work at the one I live in, just because it's a small town and there are still people, a few people I know would have walked in and see me, um, which is not great, especially when it was got time for like my 10-year high school reunion, which I didn't go to for partly that reason. But anywho, and I guess they knew that. So there was one day they called me up like, "Hey, we need you. You're out of bags. The I won't say what town I live in. They have bags. Can you get them and then bring them to our store?" I was like, "Okay, I guess." I don't remember whether or not I got paid for doing that. I mean, the whole thing took a half hour, but still, I didn't appreciate that. Again, shouldn't have happened. um, and the so at the bottom of your receipt, there's like a thing for surveys, like, "Hey, tell us how we did," some shit like that, and you gotta tell them they could win something. You're supposed to circle it or highlight it. And at first, when I started, I was being the good little new employee, and I was telling everyone. Eventually, I just stopped. I think it kind of went down a little bit. I didn't just outright stop, and no one said anything. Manager didn't give an F. Um, and my first or second day, the soda delivery guy, comes because we sell law soda, and he introduces himself, and I'm still getting used to it. I've never worked a register before. Um, which is a side thing. The register was really annoying because um, if it didn't get used like in a minute or so, it would sort of go to sleep, and you had to punch in your full social security number to wake it up. Which even, I mean, I've known mine forever. It still takes time, and plus you're gonna factor in once or twice. So that was really annoying. But anyway, so guy, he's like, "Oh, hey, I'm whatever." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm new here." He's like, "Oh, well, I come here about a couple times a week." I was like, "Okay, cool." Fast forward to the next day or the next time I see him, and he goes, "Oh, hey, Derek." I'm like, "Oh, hey." He goes, "You forgot my name, didn't you?" Like, I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, and I was trying to be polite. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sorry." And he goes, "Yeah, this wasn't a joke either." He goes, "I remember yours." I'm like, "Dude, I'm fucking sorry. I started a new job. I met a good amount of new people, you know." And so when he left, I was like, "Hey, see you next time." I want to say Bruce was his name. It was just a little thing of like, okay, I just kind of added to the weirdness. And one thing that you made to download was this app. I don't remember what it was called, to essentially keep track of your schedules. Which they posted a paper one, above the safe where everyone could see it, and they did it like 2 weeks before the month started. But they had this app that would, tell you your schedule, and it would alert you like a half hour before your shift was supposed to start. Now, but the thing was, they would change your schedule and not tell anyone. Like, there was only like 7 people I think that worked there at once. Very easy to fit in a group text, which they did send group text occasionally for some stuff. So they basically just said, "Hey, the schedule's been updated. Just take a look, make sure you're all good." No, it happened where I would just randomly check it. Again, a touch of the OCD, and like, "Oh, I work tomorrow." Granted, I don't have a social life, so it's not that big a deal. But it still would have been nice for the old heads up text. Um, and there's times where, like, I once got texted and they're like, "Hey, are you coming in?" I'm like, "No, why would I?" And they're like, "You're working now." It's like, no one fucking told me. And last I checked, I was off. So, which comes come up here soon, to when I finally got out of there. Um, Now, like I said previously, the manager that hired me was one of the key holders that got temporarily promoted. Now, the original manager came back about 2 months before I left, And on the surface, he was a decent guy, you know. But he was one of those guys where he's too proud of his job. I mean, you're managing a Dollar General, rural Illinois. No one gives an F. And he was like, "Yeah, when I left, we were the top 3 stores in our district. I have no idea how big a district is, but now we're 10th. So I want to change that around." And I'm like, "And what the fuck am I supposed to do? I run the register and try my best to fix your shitty POS system with shelving." And so I think, and part of it was, if you work retail, stores get a finite number of hours to distribute amongst the different employees. Well, when the real manager came, even though the temporary manager went down in hours, the real manager like sucked the hours from everyone. So I was only working part time. I was still with my parents. Like I said, I was dealing with health things, and I went down to working like 1 or 2 days a week, part time, which is crap. And also I hate it. So now I had kind of like a legitimate excuse to leave there. And so I started looking for another job. But I think kind of when I decided to quit, before I decided to quit, right before that, I had applied to have a day off. I had I had 2 social things on the same day, which is incredibly rare for me. And so I did it, with the set amount of time ahead of time on a schedule. It was when it first came out. It said, "Hey," they said, "Okay, I'm off that day." Just all right, cool. It went through. I can do my stuff. And then in between is when I actually got another job. It was that deli one I was telling you about. But and I was gonna I was gonna do the right thing like a sucker and get my 2 weeks notice. But then I'm at the second event that day. I think it was like a nephew's birthday party or something like that. And I get a text. They're like, "Hey, where are you?" I'm like, "What do you mean, where am I?" And they're like, "You're scheduled to work today." I'm like, "No, I'm not." I even said, I'm like, "I asked for this day off. I was approved for this day off. The schedule said I was off." So, and I even told them I was going to give my 2 weeks notice because I have a new job lined up, but I quit. So, I feel bad about the people who were trying to work, but in hindsight, but it was just like, okay, final straw. This place doesn't deserve to have me do the right thing. Again, some of the people I worked with were nice. I rarely saw the other cashiers. There was like one shift where they had 2 cashiers working at once, and it was like the day before Easter or the day before Valentine's Day. It was something like that where we had a lot of people, like last minute, or maybe it was either the day before a holiday or the day after. So we had people doing last minute stuff, people taking advantage of the now 50% off candy, which is part of the one reason why I go there. Something like that. Every time it was just in passing, I would see someone else, not counting the manager, where you had to page them if there was an issue or if you just needed more help because the line was long. And even if you just double tapped an item by mistake, you had to get them, which was a huge pain in the ass. I'm like, can you at least trust me to negate that one thing? I mean, it's $1 per general. I get it if it's a gift card thing, but what, most expensive thing on my shelf is like $20. I don't know. So that was annoying. But yeah, that was when my tenure ended, and I went to that daily job, and then I was kind of unemployed for a bit because I was dealing with health stuff. And then I found my current career, which, like I said, I'm happy about. I get to sit down. I feel like I make a difference. I feel like my opinion is heard. Not always. Pays nice protector, which is why I have my side business. If you like my necklace, check out my links to my Etsy and Mercari down below if I remember how to do that. Stay tuned for part 2, which will be dealing with customers. Um, which a good amount happened in 9 months. So stay tuned, and I'll see you then. Like and subscribe for whatever the fuck to say.